Hi there, and welcome back to Lean Reads, the channel where we share powerful insights and personal growth lessons through great books. The world has always moved in rhythms: growth and collapse, peace and conflict, innovation and decline. We call them crises, but they are really transitions. In Principles for Dealing with the Changing World Order, Ray Dalio doesn't predict the future. He helps us understand the timeless patterns that create it. If you enjoy what you hear and want to dive deeper, we've included a link to the book in the description below. Now, let's get started. History moves in cycles, and so do empires. From the grandeur of ancient Egypt and the Roman Empire to the Ottoman Caliphate and the British Crown, every dominant power in history has followed a predictable arc: rise, flourish, stagnate, and decline. In Principles for Dealing with the Changing World Order, billionaire investor Ray Dalio, founder of Bridgewater Associates, one of the largest hedge funds on earth, examines these historical patterns with the precision of an economist and the curiosity of a historian. Dalio argues that by studying the great empires of the past, we can recognize the same forces shaping today's shifting world, especially the delicate balance between the United States, the reigning global superpower, and China, the rapidly ascending challenger. This book is not just about nations, it's about the rhythm of history and how understanding it can help each of us navigate the coming decades with clarity and confidence. Ray Dalio, born 1949, is the founder of Bridgewater Associates, one of the world's largest and most influential investment firms. A renowned macro investor, Dalio has spent over 50 years studying the intersection between economics, politics, and human psychology. He is also the author of the bestseller Principles, Life and Work, a book that distilled his personal philosophy into actionable life and management lessons. With Principles for Dealing with the Changing World Order, Dalio expands his focus from the individual to the global, from personal success to the fate of civilizations. In 2020, Forbes ranked him among the top 100 wealthiest people in the world. But his true influence extends far beyond finance into the realm of strategic foresight, leadership, and historical understanding. Dalio's premise is deceptively simple. The same patterns that governed the rise and fall of Rome, the Dutch Empire, or the British Empire still shape the world today. By analyzing over 500 years of history, Dalio identifies common stages that all empires pass through, from their birth through innovation and education to their maturity marked by debt and inequality, and finally to their decline amid internal division and external challenges. The result is a framework that helps us understand the current transformation of global power, particularly how China's rise mirrors earlier historical shifts, and what that might mean for the American-led world order. While Dalio writes as an investor, his insights extend far beyond the stock market. He shows how individuals can apply the same historical awareness to safeguard their wealth, careers, and future during times of great change. In a world facing economic instability, climate pressure, and technological upheaval, understanding these cycles becomes a form of survival and empowerment. No empire lasts forever, but those who understand the cycle can thrive through its changes. The book's opening chapters guide readers through the grand narrative of empire: how prosperity is built, how it erodes, and how ordinary people can adapt. From there, Dalio connects these timeless lessons to practical strategies, from portfolio diversification to global perspective taking, helping readers build resilience in an unpredictable future. This is not just a book about history, it's a toolkit for the next era of the global economy. Every great empire, the Dutch, the British, and now the American, has followed a remarkably similar path. According to Ray Dalio, their stories are not random episodes in history, but part of a repeating pattern he calls the big cycle. The Dutch Empire rose through trade and innovation, then declined under debt and competition. The British Empire expanded through industrial power, then faltered under the weight of global wars and financial exhaustion. And today, the United States, having led the world for nearly 250 years, appears to be nearing the same inflection point. Dalio's big cycle framework shows that every empire progresses through predictable phases: ascent, peak, and decline. During the ascent, innovation flourishes, education thrives, and productivity soars. At the peak, the nation enjoys wealth, prestige, and global influence. And eventually, in the decline, complacency sets in, debts grow, inequality widens, and internal conflict undermines the system from within. Few recognize the decline when it begins. Prosperity breeds arrogance, and arrogance blinds leaders to warning signs. To understand this process, Dalio identifies 8 key indicators that reveal the health and trajectory of a nation: quality of education, innovation and technological advancement, share of global trade, economic productivity, military strength, strength of global financial markets, influence of the nation's currency, overall competitiveness, and governance. When these factors align positively, an empire ascends. When they weaken, one by one, the decline begins. By tracking these indicators, Dalio argues, investors and policymakers alike can anticipate global shifts before they happen. In his words, empires rise when they create, and they fall when they consume more than they produce. Throughout history, war and crisis have been the crucible of new empires. In the ashes of conflict, nations with strong leadership, strategic adaptability, and institutional stability often emerge stronger than before. A prime example is Japan's Meiji Restoration in the late 19th century. Facing Western colonial expansion, Japan modernized its economy, overhauled its military, and restructured its education system, transforming itself from a feudal society into an industrial powerhouse within decades. The lesson: adaptability and long term vision are essential ingredients in the ascent of nations. Education plays a central role in this transformation. 2 aspects matter most: building a technically skilled workforce and cultivating a culture of creativity and innovation. After its Civil War, the United States invested heavily in public education, ensuring literacy and technical competence across its population. That foundation enabled the country's later dominance in technology, manufacturing, and science, setting the stage for its emergence as the world's superpower after World War II. Economic and financial power also serve as defining markers of empire. During the Industrial Revolution, Britain became the world's workshop through relentless innovation in machinery, transportation, and production methods. Its capital, London, evolved into the global center of finance, and the British pound sterling became the world's reserve currency, a position of prestige that allowed Britain to borrow cheaply, invest globally, and project power far beyond its borders. This same privilege later passed to the US dollar following Britain's post-war decline. Having the world's reserve currency confers immense advantages: easy access to credit, financial dominance, and global trust. But it also carries a hidden danger: complacency. Prosperity can dull discipline, and comfort can quietly erode competitiveness. Every empire enjoys its golden age, but prosperity often sows the seeds of its downfall. As Dalio warns, the question is not whether the cycle will turn, but when and how prepared we are when it does. The anatomy of decline. Every empire, no matter how powerful, carries the seeds of its own destruction. Just as there are patterns in how nations rise, there are equally clear and often predictable patterns in how they fall. Dalio argues that the downfall of empires begins not from outside invasions, but from within, from moral decay, economic excess, and political division. The Roman Empire serves as a timeless case study. As wealth accumulated, inequality deepened, discipline faded, and the civic spirit that once united Rome disintegrated. When internal strength withers, even the mightiest armies cannot save a nation. The American parallel. Dalio sees unsettling similarities in modern America. At its peak of technological innovation and material prosperity, the United States faces the same internal vulnerabilities that doomed past empires. Prosperity has bred complacency and consumerism. A culture once driven by hard work and invention now leans increasingly toward comfort and entertainment. As Dalio puts it, when luxury becomes necessity, decline has already begun. Younger generations, heirs to vast inherited wealth, risk losing the creative hunger that built the empire in the first place. The result? Rising household debt, unsustainable national spending, and a collective illusion that abundance will last forever. America's financial dominance, maintained for decades through the global use of the US dollar, is being strained by soaring debt and overextension. History shows this pattern repeatedly. Empires sustain their lifestyles through borrowing until their credit and credibility collapse. The social fracture. Economic decline rarely happens alone. It's accompanied by moral and social decay. As inequality grows, the wealthy grow detached from the struggles of the working class, and the middle class erodes. Political polarization becomes severe, and populist movements rise, promising to reclaim lost prosperity or redistribute wealth. However, elites rarely surrender their privileges willingly. When reform demands are ignored or suppressed, societies become breeding grounds for unrest, riots, or even revolution. Dalio calls this the internal conflict phase of the big cycle, when ideological wars replace real wars until the tension explodes. The global pressure. While the leading empire battles its internal demons, rival powers rise. They study the dominant nation's systems, copy its technologies, and gradually close the gap. Eventually, they grow confident enough to challenge the status quo. In today's world, China plays that role, like a mirror, reflecting America's own ascent in the 20th century. China's growth in innovation, trade, and finance signals the early stages of a global power transition. When domestic weakness meets external competition, a perfect storm forms, a combination of debt crises, social division, and geopolitical rivalry that can topple empires. The final stage. At the breaking point, internal conflict and external war often merge. Civil strife drains resources, while rising challengers push their advantage. Currencies devalue, credit systems collapse, and the empire, once the symbol of order, becomes the epicenter of chaos. From the ruins, a new order emerges: new leaders, new political and financial systems, new alliances, and a new global reserve currency. Thus the cycle begins again, the eternal rhythm of rise, peak, and fall that has defined human civilization for millennia. A defining rivalry of the 21st century. In today's geopolitical landscape, few dynamics matter more than the escalating competition between the United States and China. As Ray Dalio argues, this confrontation is not merely a regional contest, it is the defining axis around which the future of global power will revolve. Like the historical rivalries between Athens and Sparta, Britain and France, or the US and the Soviet Union, the US China rivalry embodies the transition between an established empire and a rising challenger. How this tension unfolds will likely determine the shape of the 21st century, politically, economically, and technologically. Yet the world is no longer bipolar. Other major players, India, now the most populous nation on Earth, the European Union, still wielding vast economic influence, and emerging powers from the global south, are reshaping the global order in complex ways. Still, the gravitational center of this story remains the duel between Washington and Beijing, the strengths and struggles of the United States. Despite internal challenges, from political polarization to rising inequality, the United States remains the most powerful nation in the world. Innovation. Powerhouse. As of 2023, 8 of the world's 10 most valuable tech companies are American. The U.S. continues to lead in software, AI, biotechnology, and aerospace innovation. Military dominance. The American defense budget exceeds the combined total of the next 9 nations, including China, Russia, and India, securing global reach across land, sea, air, and space. Financial supremacy. The US dollar still accounts for roughly 60% of global foreign reserves, anchoring international trade and investment. This exorbitant privilege, as economists call it, allows the US to borrow cheaply and influence world markets. However, the same strengths that once fueled dominance may now breed complacency. Mounting national debt, deep social divisions, and a political system often paralyzed by partisanship hint at the early signs of the late-stage empire syndrome that Dalio described in previous chapters. The U.S. remains an innovative, wealthy nation, but its long-term sustainability depends on whether it can renew its institutions, restore unity, and reassert its capacity for disciplined leadership. The relentless rise of China. On the other side of the Pacific, China's ascent has been nothing short of extraordinary. In just 2 decades, its share of global GDP has surged from 4% in 2003 to 18% in 2023, a transformation unmatched in modern economic history. China's Belt and Road Initiative, now involving over 140 countries, demonstrates its ambition to expand influence through infrastructure, trade, and finance, effectively building a new network of economic alliances that challenge Western dominance. Technologically, China is no longer a follower. Firms like Huawei, BYD, and Tencent are leading global patent filings, particularly in 5G, electric vehicles, and AI. In manufacturing, China is already the world's largest exporter and a critical link in nearly every global supply chain. However, this meteoric rise comes with formidable challenges: demographic headwinds, a rapidly aging population, the legacy of the one child policy threatens to shrink the labor force, political constraints, the centralized system, while efficient in execution, risks stifling creativity and innovation. Environmental burdens. China remains the world's largest emitter of CO2, facing immense ecological and energy transition pressures. China's strength lies in its long-term planning and state-led coordination. Its weakness lies in limited political flexibility and mounting structural costs. Beyond two powers, a multipolar world. While the US and China dominate headlines, Dalio emphasizes that the global stage is fragmenting. India's youthful population and booming digital economy give it enormous future potential. The European Union remains a critical, stabilizing force in finance and diplomacy. And across Latin America, Africa, and Southeast Asia, emerging economies are demanding a greater role in shaping global rules and resource flows. This rise of the global South signals a shift away from a Western-centric order toward a multipolar world, one in which economic power and influence are distributed more widely than ever before. The investor's perspective. For Dalio, and for readers, the key is not to take sides, but to recognize patterns. The US and China are both navigating their respective stages in the big cycle. America, a mature empire wrestling with internal fragmentation. China, a rising power still testing the limits of global integration. For individuals and investors, this awareness is invaluable. It helps us anticipate structural shifts in currencies, markets, and global trade, and to position ourselves wisely in the decades ahead. Navigating a world in flux, the world is now entering a period of unprecedented transformation, politically, economically, technologically, and environmentally. To survive and prosper in this era, investors and nations alike must learn to adapt swiftly, think cyclically, and prepare for the unexpected. Ray Dalio reminds us that every great shift in history, whether the fall of empires or the birth of new powers, brings with it both peril and potential. In today's world, those who recognize long-term structural trends while staying flexible in the short term will be the ones to thrive. Technology, the new engine of power. Among all drivers of global change, technology stands above the rest. Artificial intelligence, AI, and automation are reshaping economies, industries, and even human identity itself. According to global estimates, AI could add $15.7 trillion to world GDP by 2030, an extraordinary opportunity, but one that comes with complex risks. For investors, the challenge is twofold. Identify the pioneers leading AI innovation, and understand the social and ethical disruptions that automation may unleash. Beyond AI, digital currencies, both decentralized, like Bitcoin and Ethereum, and state-controlled central bank digital currencies, CBDCs, are redefining the nature of money. The total crypto market surpassed $2 trillion by late 2021, signaling a permanent shift in how value moves through the global economy. Meanwhile, China's digital yuan pilot program illustrates how monetary technology could become a new front in geopolitical competition. Whoever controls the most trusted form of digital currency may, in time, control the next generation of global trade. Climate and energy. The dual challenge. As technology revolutionizes economies, climate change is transforming the planet itself. In 2020 alone, over 300 billion was invested in renewable energy, primarily wind and solar, with battery technology emerging as a key pillar of the global energy transition. This green transformation represents a massive investment opportunity. Clean energy, storage innovation, and sustainable infrastructure are likely to become the defining growth sectors of the coming decades, yet the risks are equally enormous. By 2050, rising sea levels could displace over 140 million people, threatening coastal megacities like Miami, Shanghai, and Jakarta. The economic cost of climate change could exceed $23 trillion, eroding global productivity and deepening inequality. For investors, the solution lies in resilience and diversification, backing companies that drive adaptation, sustainability, and innovation, while spreading exposure across geographies and industries less vulnerable to climate shocks. Managing risk in an uncertain era. In a volatile world, risk management is not optional, it is essential. Dalio emphasizes the importance of diversification across asset classes, equities, bonds, real estate, commodities, and alternative investments. A well balanced portfolio can reduce volatility by as much as 20% compared to single asset concentration. Equally vital is the ability to plan for the improbable, from pandemics to geopolitical conflicts. Building contingency plans, maintaining liquidity, and continually reassessing portfolio exposure are the disciplines that separate survival from collapse. A sound portfolio balances growth-oriented assets for expansion with defensive holdings for protection. But above all, the most powerful strategy is awareness, staying informed, flexible, and emotionally grounded as the tides of history shift once again. The big picture. Preparing for the next world order. At its core, Dalio's message transcends finance. He teaches that the rise and fall of empires follow a timeless rhythm: expansion, prosperity, excess, and decline. Each phase brings opportunities for those who see clearly and act wisely. Today, the United States remains the world's leading power, but its dominance faces undeniable strain. China's rise, along with the emergence of India, the EU, and the global South, signals the gradual birth of a multipolar world, one where power, innovation, and capital are distributed more evenly across nations. For modern investors, the lesson is clear. We cannot cling to a single empire, ideology, or asset class. Instead, we must understand how cycles turn, where innovation flows, and how resilience is built. To survive and prosper through the changing world order, you must understand it and then align yourself with it. Principles for Dealing with the Changing World Order is not merely a book about empires, it is a guide for living wisely in an unpredictable age. By blending data, history, and timeless wisdom, Dalio gives readers the tools to navigate the chaos of our century, not with fear, but with understanding. The message is both sobering and empowering. Change is inevitable. Collapse is optional. Those who study the patterns of history can prepare for them, and those who prepare can build their own empires, even in times of decline. After finishing Principles for Dealing with the Changing World Order, I was struck by how Ray Dalio managed to connect history, economics, and human nature into one continuous pattern. This isn't to just a book about finance or geopolitics. It was a mirror reflecting the cycles of our own lives and societies. Dalio reminds us that empires, like people, rise on discipline, innovation, and unity, and fall when arrogance, division, and short-term thinking take over. What makes this book powerful is not fear of decline, but the sense of agency it gives us. We can't stop history's tides, but we can learn to ride them. Reading this book left me with both humility and clarity. No success lasts forever, but those who understand change can build strength that does. Every generation believes its moment is unique, yet history reminds us it's part of a greater cycle. What we choose to learn, adapt, and build today will decide who leads tomorrow. The rise and fall of empires is inevitable, but wisdom, balance, and awareness can last forever.